All right. Well, I want to go ahead and just welcome everyone to our session today on how to stop singing the email blues. And today we have with us Carolyn Walsh. And Carolyn is the Director of Communications for the UAB Department of Medicine. She spent over 30 years in professional communications, and she brought her expertise to UAB in 2013. And so we're happy to have Carolyn with us today. Also, just a couple of housekeeping things. If you're not sharing or talking, if you would please mute your microphone as you're coming in. That way we don't get the background noise. And then when you do want to speak with us, unmute and please do so. And then also cameras on, cameras off. We're good either way, but we love seeing your faces. So please feel free. And then lastly, just to let you know, this session is being recorded and it will be posted on the HR Wellness website so that people that were unable to join us today will be able to watch this session later. So Carolyn, I'm going to pass it to you and let you get started.
Thank you so much, Allison. I appreciate the intro. And I just wanted to say that this is a topic that is deeply personal to me. I have as a communications scholar, I really have long recognized that as we use email as a communication tool, it often winds up being quite a frustrating experience. And we sing those email blues all too frequently at work. So I'm delighted to present this talk and that it is a part of UAB Wellness Week. I just want to say a special thanks to our Chief Human Resources Officer, Janet May, and to our Provost, Pam Benoit, for setting aside space to talk about how our workplace wellness is impacted by email. And so I'm delighted to be a part of our inaugural Wellness Week, and there are plenty more events on the wellness calendar. So I think we're going to drop that link in the chat. And I also need to be sure to acknowledge my facilitators, co-facilitators from Learning and Development, Allison Nisley and Mike Maynor, who are going to be helping monitor the chat and do all of the wonderful things that an interactive presentation entails. So let's get started. Want to be sure to say that I have no commercial relationships to disclose. There's no conflict of interest here, but in full transparency, I need to let you know that this talk was inspired in large part by this amazing book, A World Without Email. It was written by New York Times bestselling author Cal Newport, PhD, and Dr. Newport is on faculty at Georgetown. And I read this title and I thought, that's a book that I wish I had written. So we are going to discuss it's not a book review by any means. This is my interpretation of a lot of the wonderful principles that he elucidates. I do encourage you to, if you're interested in further reading and research, to give that a look. It's available readily online at your local bookseller or online bookseller of choice. And some learning objectives just to keep us on target. At the end of the session, we hope that this learning is transformative. At the end of this session, you should be able to describe the underlying characteristics of email and their impact on workplace well-being. So a very important side note here, when I'm talking about email, I'm certainly talking about what we know as the exchange in an email setting like Outlook, but I'm also referring to other digital tools that we use to communicate and share messages, things like Slack or like chat in Teams. Anything that is asynchronous in its delivery of messages is what I'm referring to as email for the purpose of this talk. Secondly, We should be able to recognize the principles that can mitigate email's effect on our productivity at work and job satisfaction overall. We should also be able to identify, and I think this is probably what most of us have tuned in today for, those specific behaviors and habits that will empower us to overcome those email blues. So all learning is best when it's interactive. So be ready for the audience participation portion, because I'm about to ask a question that I want to reply to. And that is this. It's the magical miracle question. Put yourself in this mindset. Imagine you've been given a day where all your email is handled for you. All the incoming requests are answered. Nothing is going to pile up for you to tend to later. Tomorrow, 0 new messages in your inbox from today. So my question to you is this. Please reply as you are comfortable, either by typing in the chat box or by unmuting and quickly sharing. What would you do with your day? No emails coming your way. What do you do?
Time for reflection.
Time for some reflection. I love that answer.
Focus on other tasks at hand.
Oh my goodness. What sort of tasks?
Work-related.
Work-related tasks. Yes, absolutely. Those more mission projects rather than the urgent email questions we might be fielding. Projects I see in the chat, planning for the future. Oh, connect with the bedside nursing staff. That is a worthy activity. Yes. Knocking out to-dos. Ooh, watching some sort of professional development on LinkedIn. Rachel, I love that answer. So here's what I'm seeing is a lot of, I would do my real work as opposed to my email work, which is pseudo work. Finish project. Email is definitely that phenomenon. I think you probably knew it from the title. You guessed it from the title. Email can make us sing the blues. It's a phenomenon that keeps us from engaging in our most important and mission-related work projects. In other words, the struggle is real. And I think we can all see ourselves in the blue, fighting against multiple opposing forces to try to get our work done, connecting with patients, be less distracted, take time to learn new skills, that one about the rest of my job. All of these things are so important. But before we can win this tug of war, we really have to understand what it is about email that is really at the heart of making us sing these email blues. There are 4 underlying character flaws that I want to go over with us together today. And I want to see if these sound as familiar and potentially as painful to you as they do to me. First off, email is interruptive. It does not take much at all to distract us. In fact, all we have to do is hear that chime and we are distracted from the work that we set out to do with best intentions. In fact, here's a startling statistic for us to consider. In 2018, Rescue Time did a survey and they found that every 6 minutes, the average worker stops what they're doing to check in on their email. We do not spend, on average, more than 6 minutes without losing focus, chasing that squirrel. So it's really important that we recognize it's not just an aggravation, it's an interruption with a cognitive cost. We think sometimes that we're actually pretty good at multitasking, but I'm here to tell us neuroscience says differently. So I want us to take just a little time and let me drive this point home. So We've got a little activity together. Are you ready? I want you to draw a couple of lines on a piece of paper. It can be a scratch piece of paper. It doesn't have to be anything you're going to save. But I want us to think about these two sentences. Number one, I am a great multitasker. And number two, the numerals 1 through 20. So when research subjects were asked to do this exact same task, write out, I am a great multitasker, and then write consecutively the numbers 1 through 20. It took them about 22 seconds. So what I'm going to ask us to do is to see if we can repeat that experiment and get the same results. But this time, I want us to go one step further. Instead of writing it in order of the words and the numbers, I want us to switch back and forth. I'm going to set a 22-second timer, and we're going to see how far we get. When I say go, I want you to start writing I and then 1, A and then 2, and so on. Everybody ready? All right, here we go. And start. Do, 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 do. Do, 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 do. Dee, do, dee, do, dee, do, dee, do, 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 dee, do. Do, dee, do, 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 do. And stop. I want to see a show of hands, please. How many people actually completed switching back and forth? I am a great multitasker. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. How many hands do we see, Allison? One hand. One hand is all I can personally see. Allison's checking. My guess is that even though we may consider ourselves absolutely phenomenal at multitasking, we really are not. Most people tend to get around to maybe pair number 12. This is because every time we switch our focus, there is a slight cognitive drain. And every time we take that interruption at face value, we are allowing ourselves to create a cumulative slowdown. And when we add the slowdown to the frustration of just being distracted at work and we lose our momentum, we're going to sing, say it with me, those email blues. All right, email's second character flaw. Email is irresistible. We open our inboxes and we see them staring at us and we simply can't say no. Why is this? Well, it's because we're social. We are biologically programmed to respond to each other. Think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Love and belonging are just one step above personal safety, food, and shelter. So when we think about this, we know that there are biological needs at play, and the laws of our own reciprocity, of persuasion even, are at work. When I send Allison an invitation to my Halloween party, then what am I expecting in return? Allison, what am I expecting in return?
An invite to my party.
To your Halloween party. Absolutely. I expect to be responded to in kind. The same is true of pretty much every email message. Another factor at play is the fact that we just came through, I don't know if anybody noticed, a pretty world-altering work paradigm shift called the pandemic, and we went remote. And so when we decided to do this, we had to adapt to a whole new way of thinking how we would interact with each other. And this is especially challenging for bosses and supervisors and supervisees. Let me say it that way. How does my boss know that I'm actually at work if I don't reply to their email within an hour or 2 hours? I create instead of autonomy and trust, there's a potential to be creating suspicion. Maybe I'm just at the pool all day or watching my soap operas instead of doing the actual work. So remote proof of performance is one of those things that we really feel like we need to be sure to reply. We just can't say no. Same fear of missing out drives us again. What if there's something extra important? And what about all my hardcore list makers out there? Have you ever written a to-do on your list that is already done just so that you can have the thrill of crossing it off? Yes, yes, I know you. I am on that same team. So the biological urge of dopamine that makes us feel good when we clear our inboxes, it is a real thing. So we are fighting. We can't just say no. It's that irresistible. And when we can't meet the demand, we feel tremendous anxiety. Email is also what? Incessant.
Why is the top Family Guy?
There are
Use for
so many
presentation. Oh, went
emails
to
and so
different
little time.
It's Wellness Week at UAB.
And so when we are actually in a place, in a format of communication where the channel is open all the time, 24/7. I know that there are people in this very session today who have received emails that were sent at 9:45 or at 3:45 a.m. What in the world? This open channel means that there's no governor and absolutely no order other than people who want to send us a message, right? The average person, in fact, yet another fun fact, sends 40 emails and receives 100 per day. Does that jive with y'all? Do I see anybody? Yes, I'm seeing some nods. Thank you very much.
Above average.
Say it again.
I'm above average.
Oh, I love it. You're above average. What a positive way to say that you're completely overwhelmed at work. The next thing is that even out of office messages don't really stop people from sending us email. They just send it and expect us to respond when we return. So when we get those incessant email messages that come so much faster than we can respond, it creates a sense of overwhelm and it makes us sing those email blues. So, fourth underlying characteristic, and this is perhaps the most important one, email is institutional. Again, I'm so grateful to our provost and our chief human resources officer for making time for us to think about our wellness at work. And we definitely are going to need their help and the help of other institutional leaders to create lasting change. So how in the world did we even get to this point? Well, we're an evil email empire for a reason. And that reason is that in 1971, the first person to invent an email thought it was really super cool. And we figured out that yes, it was. And in the 80s and 90s, it spread like kudzu. Why did it happen this way? Frictionless technology drove that sort of invasive change. And so what do I mean here by the word frictionless? Anybody care to drop a comment in our chat? What do I mean by frictionless? Or unmute?
I don't have to have any personal contact with anyone.
That is true. Absolutely. I don't have to be in sync with somebody else. I don't have to set an appointment. I can just send an email and it's not quite anonymous, but it works a little bit like that. No restrictions. Excellently. Bad news, easily delivered, less emotion. Exactly. Also, think about what used to happen. In order to send a message in 1982, what do we have to do? Get a piece of letterhead, put it in the typewriter, type it all out, yank it out of the typewriter, make a bunch of copies, fold them all up, I could go on to the email, to the letterhead envelope, to finding the addresses, to type them on, to the cost of postage. So now we have a no hassle, no cost, no delay. It gets there immediately. I don't have to wait for Mr. Postman to come around and deliver those messages. So we said, absolutely, we'll do this. The novelty drove it. And what we did was, instead of just replacing those communication habits that we previously had with voicemails or faxes or memos, we adopted an entirely new hyperactive hive mind. And this is one of the key principles that Cal Newport drives home in his book. This is a place where we are all swirling around in an unending flight of workflow. I think we can say email is not just a tool at work, it is often our work. The workflow is centered around these ongoing conversations that are unstructured and unscheduled. So what are we to do? We may not have intended it, but we're certainly indoctrinated to sing those email blues. If email is institutional and incessant and irresistible and interruptive, what are we left to do? Individual tactics simply cannot overcome institutional culture. So here's what we must consider. We have to change our minds about email's role in the workplace and adopt intentional alternative workflows. And I'm just going to let that sit there. It's no wonder that we're talking about this during Wellness Week, because actually what we're really talking about here is that we need organizational behavior change. Has anybody here in this session tried to start a new habit? Stop caffeine, go for more walks, drink more water, leave work on time by 5 o'clock every day, or whenever the end of the workday is for you. Anybody else done such a thing? Anybody willing to share a habit that they attempted? Oh no, Stephanie, yes, and you're not achieving it.
Yeah, so one of mine is that I need to take lunch at a decent hour. I just can't do it.
Oh
I'm
my
terrible.
goodness.
So I get so caught up and then time is just like gone.
It's really hard. Changing our habit is just one of doing anything that is a new behavior is so challenging, but it is so worth it. And if we change our mind about how we use email in the workplace, then that's one thing. But we also need to have a new channel, right? It's so much easier to say to ourselves, I am going to start doing something, and to do it, I will this. In other words, I'm going to start walking, and I'm going to buy myself a new pair of shoes to make sure that I do it. A lot of us sign up for the gym for this very reason. So if we are going to change how we use email, we probably need to use email more effectively and have an alternative channel for us to communicate with each other and manage our work. So here we go. Let's talk about those principles that are going to help us do exactly that. The first one is this: attention capital principle. We must use this principle to ground all the others. I want to see, I think I know what the answer is going to be. Is there anyone on this call who would willingly go to the bank, withdraw every bit of money that you have in your accounts, savings, checking, whatever, bring it in cash and sit it on the side of your desk, and then say, My door's always open. Just come on by and get whatever you need. I'm here 24/7. I get a resounding no, right? Because that just is ludicrous. We would no sooner do that than we would fly to the moon. But this is exactly how we tend to behave with email. We say, hey, I'm open for distraction. But if we say no, our attention, our focus, our knowledge is how we add value to the organization. And so I'm going to guard it. That's where we need to start. I'm going to drive this point home with a little vignette. Okay. So in 2012, Gloria Marks sets out, she interrupts the email services for 13 of her research subjects. Among those subjects are a boss and a lab supervisor. So every day, the lab supervisor needs 2 hours to set up a lab experiment, but the boss is seemingly oblivious to this task and frequently emails interruptive requests to the lab supervisor. So during the email blackout, what happens? Those interruptions stop. And this is really critical. The boss was just 2 doors down. They could have easily walked 12 paces to get to the lab supervisor's lab, but did they? No. They were defaulting to, it is easy for me to send this, and I am not worried about the attention of my lab supervisor. So the real hard question is this one. I feel like this happens routinely to all of us, whether we're lab supervisors or not. What happens when the email comes back on? And thank you. It starts back, it blows right back up. So the attention capital principle is teaching us that we have to change our mindset about this, right? We have to do something differently than just revert to default. So that brings us to our next principle, which is production process principle. We must adopt intentional processes to bring order and efficiency to our work. So I'm going to ask somebody to let me know in the chat, what's the default order for email? What does it come in? How do we see it displayed in our inbox?
Most recent first.
Thank you very much. Most recent first, chronological. Does that make any sense at all for a workflow? Does the fact that Allison sent me something at 9 a.m. mean that it's more important than the one that came in at 10 a.m.? Probably not. Thank you very much. No, not really. Chronological order. So in order to find an alternative to email, right? Because a lot of these messages are not just annoyances. A lot of them are actually legit instructions for how to proceed next, approvals for projects that are in process. We have to take a step back. And one of the things that can help us do this is to have a process in place that drives our production. So for me, this is a key takeaway. We need to consider alternative means of managing our work. And one of those ways that can really be helpful is a digital task board. So I'm going to talk about Kanban, which is basically the word for digital task boards. It was invented by an industrial engineer at Toyota. And the idea here is that now, instead of a random chronological assortment of messages, I have an opportunity and a system and a structure to view, sort, and prioritize my tasks. And in addition, If I have a good task board, I can make assignments so that I clearly delineate who is responsible for the next step. I can collect different assets, such as the actual report we're working on together, or
When were you thinking
somebody's
about running?
feedback, or perhaps a
After I
photograph
finish.
if I'm trying
Okay.
to find an illustration. And in addition, so here we were, view, sort, and prioritize our work, be able to assign it to others, collect all sorts of assets, including the actual work that we're doing together, drafts of the grant or a letter of recommendation or whatever the latest financial report is, and a way to record and archive it to refer back to it later. In other words, what we're basically doing here is organizing like a big giant bulletin board, giving us with every task that we could possibly think of and be assigned, written on its own individual index card, and organizing them from a vantage point where we can sort and prioritize. The main categories, according to Kanban, are things to do, things we are currently doing, and things that are now done. In other words, things that I have assigned to me, things that I will be currently working on today or this week, and then the archive. And so I'd like to show you a quick example of that at play. When I was very first in the Department of Medicine, I was assigned a project, and you can see this is an actual Asana board that is showing me a project called Good News. That's the name of our weekly e-newsletter. And the weekly e-newsletter was managed largely by email. People who had a bit of good news, a grant had been received, a publication had been included in a peer-reviewed journal, or an award had been given. People would email me this information, and I would write it up and include it for publication in our newsletter. Well, that was sort of a decent workflow, but it really wasn't, because it was in what? Chronological order. It was easy to overlook. Not everything was centered around the same thing. Maybe I got 3 or 4 different messages about the same exact award that was being given. So what we realized is that using a digital task board and arranging it in to do, doing, and done made a lot more sense. And we were so much more effective and efficient. Each of these cards represents something that is happening in the Department of Medicine that deserves to be published. Let's just look at this. Dr. Agarwal recently had a publication about kidney resident macrophages that have distinct subpopulations and occupy distinct microenvironments. So this is great. Well, what do I need to know in order to be able to publish that? If I click on the card, it expands and gives me a detailed view and collects all the information that I need. And the beauty of it is that I can drag it up and say, this is my number 1, or I can say, save it for later and move it back into my backlog, or whatever. It makes it beautifully easy to move between what I'm focusing on to doing and what I can still focus on to do, and what I have already completed, done. Again, we have to have an alternate process, a production workflow to keep up with our projects if we are to eliminate email and stop it from causing us to sing the email blues. And an additional process that we really need to consider is how we get in sync with others. In other words, how do I schedule those face-to-face things? That those conversations that need to happen in real time. One of those ways is to set up regular office hours, right? Holding space in a time for conversation to flow naturally. Similarly, for people who are involved, units or teams, to discuss their ongoing progress in a recurring team meeting. Both of these things, having structure and a way to get in to have a natural conversation, replaces the hyperactive hive mind and allows you to be allows you to consider things when you have the attention and the focus to give them. And to make these work successfully, we need to consider how we interact in the meantime. In other words, if I have a regular weekly standing meeting with my team, I definitely don't want to pepper them in the meantime with emails. What I might want to consider is just as simple as a scratch pad or a sticky note with my teammate's name on it that says, when I have the thought, I have a place to write it down so that I do not forget it. And when that happens, I'm just creating an agenda for our next project team meeting. And I am not interrupting Sarah when I am asking, by asking her to do 52 other things. Again, guarding her attention and her focus like it's money. Creating a process so that I know that I will be able to connect with her in a meaningful way, move the work forward in priority and in order, and not and using the process to support that. So the last principle I want to discuss is the protocol principle. And we are about to get into the nitty-gritty here. We have to have protocols. Another word for this would be guidelines. Another word for this would be boundaries, to frame our interactions with each other. What we're doing is exchanging information, but if we do not do it in a way where clear expectations are set up front and boundaries are put around it, then we wind up sacrificing our ability to focus at work. So I'm going to ask Allison to do a little drama. I'm going to channel my inner thespian here. And we're going to talk about a typical exchange. And this exchange is called ping pong. And it is how we typically set up a meeting at UAB. And scene. Allison, you're right. We should meet. We need to go over those training materials. Will you please let me know what works for you?
Should we shoot for next week?
Yeah, sounds good to me. Generally speaking, Tuesday and Thursday are probably best.
I'm sort of swamped those days. Friday?
Well, sure. When?
Morning?
Morning. Okay. Maybe I could do 11. Is that too late?
Rats. I leave for an off-site appointment around then. How does the following week look for you?
And scene. So what did we do there? Did that sound familiar to anybody? Talk to me in the chat. Talk to me. Yes, of course it did, right? Thank you so much. Yes, so familiar. It hurts. It makes us sing the email blues. And here's the deal, right? That exchange of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different messages, those 8 messages took probably only 20 seconds of our time here today. But what would it have looked like if that had transpired over email? It's nearly instantaneous, but it's not really, is it? And an excellent point being made in the chat. What if this was more than 2 people? Oh, I hear ya. I have sung that email blues. So what I want to say is that there is a way for us to set a new expectation for this particular thing, a meeting scheduling protocol. And it looks a little something like this. Write a longer initial email. You're like, why? I don't have time the first time. That's why I was doing this ping pong to begin with. But in truth, we do have time, and it will save us. If it took us 30 seconds on this call together, but 15 minutes or 3 days to actually get to a resolution over email, then spending 60 seconds to pull up your email template and write it differently the first time will be a time saver and help us stop singing the email blues. So I write initially, hey, Allison, and hopefully I spelled her name with only one L next time. Yes, I definitely want to review that training material with you. I propose we meet at Starbucks and get ourselves some coffee. I have listed 3 dates over the next 2 weeks. And if any of them work for you, just reply and tell me which one, and we'll be done. How nice is that? And if none of those times work, do not email me anymore. I would love to just be able to say that. No, in fact, what I said is call me, use an alternative method of communication on my cell, which I've given you below, during one of my upcoming office hours, so I know I'll be around. So I've given her a method and a time to connect with me when we can talk in real time. And we'll find something that actually works. So writing a longer email sounds counterintuitive to solving that messaging ping pong, but it begins to be thoughtful and create a protocol around what we do on the regular. In addition, I encourage every single person here to become a busy searcher. And by that, I mean figuring out how to look at Outlook's busy search function and identify times that might work. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Allison is going to drop a link in the chat. And even better is to explore the Outlook add-ons that are available through UABIT. And those Outlook add-ons are called Find Time and Bookings. And I want to be very quick about this. Find Time is trying to identify among more than 2 people a single opportunity for a standalone meeting. Bookings is more like office hours in that it is appointments that are available for the taking through this service that can be set and accepted without any exchange of email. So these things are really amazing, and I encourage you to explore them once we're through today. And now, for my top 5 pet peeves, even though I know that peeves do not make very good pets, I still have them, and I bet we all do. So I want to talk about the specific protocol violations that really drive me crazy and propose alternatives to those pet peeves. So here we go. See if any of these are on your pet peeve list for email. Receiving email after work hours or on weekends. No phone number being provided. Generic subject lines. Runaway version train and forgotten promises. Who says reply all? Oh my goodness, that is definitely one of the top offenders. And I think that we all would really, we came knowing that reply all was deeply, deeply flawed. But it is interesting to think that we somehow we haven't managed to get that message across to everyone at UAB. It could have something to do with the fact that there are 22,000 students and 24,000 employees that it takes a while to get the message all the way through. All right, so let's talk about these specific pet peeves and what we can do to change them. If we get an email that is sent outside the boundaries of our regular work schedule, especially sometimes at night, but especially on weekends, what can we do differently to make a change in that protocol? For me, this is the answer: master the delay send. So I would hope that some of us have actually experienced this before and found out how to do it, because it can save so much uncertainty about whether someone expects a reply immediately or not. And that is this: when you are ready to click send, if you're on a Mac, it looks like the left. You simply have a little tiny drop down arrow to the side of your paper airplane, and you can schedule the send for a different time of day. Or if you are in a Windows environment, you have to know exactly where it is. It's in your tags group on the tool ribbon, and it's a teeny tiny little extra button right here. And under the delivery options, we have to select do not deliver before, so that we can enter the information here. I think this is so important, especially for all of us who supervise others, to recognize that the law of reciprocity pretty much demands almost immediate replies, and delaying the send until you know the person on the receiving end will actually be working is a marvelous way to respect boundaries and enhance workplace wellness. Signatures in every single email, every single time. And that is available for us on the UAB toolkit. One of the things that is really challenging and keeps driving us back to email is that we don't do a great job of providing alternative means of contact. And for most of us, that's a phone number. And for a lot of us, that changed during the pandemic. So we are no longer using an office number, and I can't look it up in the UAB directory if you're not going to be in an office. So providing a phone number for every single email, and don't assume that a reply to me doesn't need that signature. In other words, the only thing I may have is one reply from you. And if I need to urgently reach out, I have nothing to go from. So this is a protocol that I urge us to consider adopting. It takes very little time to set it up, and it yields wonderful results. Write explicit, current subject lines. Do not send me something that says FYI. Why? Because I cannot ascertain quickly what it is, and I certainly can't find it once I'm looking for it after the fact. So instead of sending me something that says good news, tell me what the good news actually is. Dr. Sagusa has gotten an R01 grant. What about, please let me know your thoughts? What is better? Please review requested the 2022 annual report draft. Heads up, that is as generic as it gets. What about what you're actually giving a heads up on? The grant deadline that's approaching. Or photos from yesterday. How many yesterdays were there? Plenty. But labeling it clearly with what the content is, again, avoids confusion, avoids delay, helps us get back in touch with the information that we're looking for. Another protocol to consider. This is the runaway version train. And I have it on good authority that all of us in here have had some sort of experience with trying to get approvals on some particular piece of communication, an annual report, a grant, a letter of recommendation, whatever the communication is. What we wind up with is, hey, I want to see it before it goes out, and I need Jane's eyes on it, and I need Mike's eyes on it, and I definitely need to make sure that John sees it before we send this out. So what do? We take that one document, and how do we send it? Email. Yes, it is email. And we create now 4 different documents that we have split apart, and we're going to have to merge back into the same single document. What if we eliminated all of that? Stop the runaway version train in its tracks and instead master cloud collaboration. This can sound a little bit scary, but Office 365 has file sharing built in, and you may not have even noticed it because it's a teeny tiny button across the top next to the toolbar, and it basically says right here, share. And when we click share, we have the opportunity to invite all of those reviewers into the same one document, reducing the total number of back and forth that it takes and collecting all of the data into a place that's going to allow for quicker publication, moving the project work forward as opposed to creating a number of emails. So I asked Allison if she would drop the links in for us because this is fairly sophisticated and it is a new skill to learn, but we actually have a marvelous tool available for us, LinkedIn Learning at UAB. We have free accounts that can give us access to courses that teach us very quickly what to do and how to do it. So mastering that can again help us prevent us from singing those email blues. Last one, drag and drop calendar time block. Here is what happens to me all too frequently. Again, in the volume of 100 emails being received in a day, or those of us who are above average, we have the opportunity to set appointments with ourselves out of an email. So let's just imagine this, for example. I received something from UAB that says I have some required training to do. So this email is telling me you need to make some time to do it. Well, how am I going to remember to do that? I have 500 other things that I'm trying to work on. By simply dragging this email, picking it up and dragging it onto the calendar icon in the lower left-hand corner, it will automatically set up a new appointment for me with all of the content of the email below. This works both in Mac and in PC environments. And this is a beautiful way to make sure that you are getting to the tasks and putting them in a place that you are planning your to-do rather than leaving it in your inbox or trying to create and find a folder remotely. So we have 7 minutes left until the end of our hour together. And I want you to know that we will stay a little over to answer questions if you have them. But right now, what I'm going to ask of us is to take just 2 minutes for feedback. And Allison, will you please drop that in the file for us? Something that I'm asking you a giant favor. Will you enhance my wellness by giving a feedback on the course content here? And it is 3 quick questions. And if you'll click that Qualtrics link, you should be able to answer those quickly. And I am going to give that 2 minutes. And then we'll come right back and wrap it all up. Teresa, I think absolutely we are going to post this video recording to the HR wellness website. And when we do, all of the links will be here, but I will also do my best to create a bit of a list and email it to the attendees from today.
Hey, somebody mentioned about the Jabber app.
Mhm.
I'm told that it use us a lot of your battery, and actually I put mine in my cell phone and it really use battery. So I went back to the people with Cisco, and he was able to forward my new, the new Cisco phone, because the old one I was always to forward and unforward easily, but I had trouble with the new one, the new Cisco, and he forwarded to my cell phone. That way I can answer the phone when I'm not in my office. The thing with the Jabber is good because you can call somebody using the Jabber application, and it's like you are calling from your office, really.
You're protecting your personal email from abuse. And I think that is a wonderful thing. And I've been reviewing a bit of these comments in the chat, and I really, really love that we are experiencing some community here and solving problems together. Thank you for sharing that information. So let's come back and wrap it up. This is the last slide I intend to share, and I really hope that you have gotten a little bit of different perspective, and that we will, that these things that we've discussed today will definitely improve your well-being at work. So here we go. There are some additional habits that I highly recommend as we, in context of Wellness Week, right? How are we going to maintain our wellness at work, especially as it regards email? Certainly, we're going to think about the attention capital principle, having a production process, and and creating protocols, which are basically code word for boundaries. In addition, I want to encourage you, if at all possible, to turn off the notification sounds and the badges on your email application. What this can potentially do is help you put a little bit of a barrier between the irresistible pull of email and the sight of seeing things stack up 19, 30, 152 emails, and give you the opportunity to choose when you interact. Now, a lot of that'll take some additional conversations with your teammates to set expectations in advance, but especially when it comes to your phone, this is vital. I can't tell you how many times I have gone to check my blood sugar using my phone and opened it up to get to that application so that I could scan my sensor. And before I knew what was happening, I was deep in an email glut. Second, review your work priorities prior to opening your email for the day. If you started today looking at email on your phone from your bed, I can tell you that it is diminishing your wellness. So please do consider the opportunity to look at the actual work that needs to be accomplished prior to opening the door to distraction by opening your email inbox. This is my greatest hope. My greatest hope is that you will share something you've learned with another person. You will increase your retention exponentially if you talk about one thing that you've learned with somebody else. And the last thing, my concluding statement here at 1 p.m. is sing with me. Share with me whatever happy new email tunes you may be singing. Do not be afraid to send me an email. I'm happy to receive an email, especially if it has a great subject line and follows those protocols. Feel free to reach out, Carolyn@uab.edu. And this concludes the presentation, but I'm happy to stay on live and answer questions. Thank you so much for sharing an hour with me and Allison and Mike.